I got extra doses of a variety of medications, and I didn't feel well. And so I went to the bathroom, as you do when you don't feel well. And that's where I died, on the toilet. It felt like that. It felt like this ability to just stretch. And it was very like elastic or plastic almost in nature, where I could just really stretch galaxies and beyond and zoom into consciousness. And here's the thing that I think is one of the most important points, is that
You mentioned that we need to do certain things before we leave this earthly incarnation because it affects what happens to us on the other side. So, will you share what you learned from your near death experience about the importance of people making these changes before they leave this incarnation?
yeah. So there's three things that I saw that are, and so most people that are on the consciousness path, and by the way, listening to this interview right now, that's you.
Right.
Yes,
If
yes,
you
we are
got
talking to
this
you.
far, if you got this far, you're on the path.
Yes, we are talking to you, my friend.
My guest today is Alysa Ruston, who had a profound journey from near death experience to universal consciousness. After battling multiple autoimmune diseases, Alysa died, but she transcended her physical body to experience cosmic realms and profound truths. So I am so excited today to unravel the mysteries of life and death through Alyssa's eyes. So, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, I have goose chills with that introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about today's
Well,
conversation.
I know that this is going to be a very deep and profound conversation. Normally, when people talk about near death experiences, they kind of gush over and they talk about what happened to them. But today, I really want to dive in deep because you have so many downloads that you received after your near death experience. I think that you are clear cognizant or clairvoyant, and I know that you know about things that are coming. And just from talking to you in the few minutes before our interview, you have this profound sense of what you need to do that transcends fear, because a lot of people who are very secure in a career stay in that and they don't leave it because of the fear of the unknown, the fear that they will not make as much. And you stepped off the cliff, girl. So I'm really excited to gain as much knowledge as we can for the audience today.
Awesome. I'm here for it all.
I love it. I love it. Well, why don't we start with I'll let you tell your near death experience in whatever way you want to share it.
Okay, great. Well, and I want to also say, there's gazillions of interviews that I've done out there about this. So if you feel like you missed anything, or you want to, want any more that I didn't cover here, definitely, Google it. But I guess where I want to start is that I was really sick, and I had multiple autoimmune diseases, and I was on a lot of drugs. Okay, I'm talking 28 different medications, a cocktail, if you will. And that cocktail was delivered via a PICC line in my arm to my heart. And so it was pretty heavy duty stuff. And for most of the days, I was infusing in a chair, and I would just have, medication dripping into me. And I was pretty much a zombie. And idea was to kill everything in my body, right? To kill it all off. And you could think of it as like a form of antibiotic chemotherapy, and just try to kill all the bugs and bacteria and viruses that create a lot of our autoimmune diseases. And I think that's a key too, is that autoimmune disease, people tend to think that autoimmune disease is caused by the body attacking itself, when in fact the body doesn't attack itself. There's underlying viral and bacterial growth in the body that then the body attacks that, but it appears as if it's attacking itself. So not a lot of people know that. In fact, a lot of doctors don't know that about autoimmune disease. They just assume the body's attacking itself. The body does not attack itself. Body heals itself. So I was in this process of trying to kill off all the viruses. It was just too aggressive and too intense for me. And although it was well intentioned, it ended up killing me. And at the time, I was married. And my ex husband would tell you that most days I was riding the line between life and death, because I was on so much medication. I mean, it's just impossible for me to even consider the thought of it now. But back then, I was 240 pounds. I used a walker to get around. I wore diapers because my parts didn't work. I was really in a bad state. And so I was doing everything I thought I knew how to do to heal myself medically, except that I was still drinking and smoking and eating the worst foods. And I just had no idea of really how to heal myself. So one day, the medication was too much. I got extra doses of a variety of medications, and I didn't feel well. And so I went to the bathroom, as you do when you don't feel well. And that's where I died, on the toilet. In fact, like Elvis did. Yeah. So that was the amazing part. And it's funny because, when I died, I didn't have the normal pearly gates experience that I think people think about as a near death experiencer. And I didn't even have that out of body experience where I looked down and saw my body. I personally think that's because I had so many drugs in my system that I sort of had to bypass that period. And I got up into a place that I call God consciousness or divine consciousness, which was so delicious. And it is literally the most physical thing I've ever done without a body. If you can imagine being one with all that is all at once and having the ability to see through and experience through every single thing on this planet, both man made and God made, and beyond this planet, on all planets, which, by the way, on all planets, there's totally life on all planets. It's just not life that we're familiar with, right? And not life that we have the understandings about or even a dimensional access to. So imagine, if you just want to constrict yourself to this world right now, imagine having the consciousness to where you are getting data and feeding back every single thing on this planet's experience. And it was literally like I had the ability to go into each one of these things all at once or zoom in multiple directions, And I always kind of describe it like imagine seeing, have you ever seen that movie where there's security cameras and there's a guy watching the security cameras and there's hundreds of different little cameras? It was like that, only times a billions. And they were sort of bubular in shape, but all of that was feeding back into the consciousness. And so I was up in that consciousness. And at that point, I didn't really have an identity. I was not Alyssa at that point. I was a being that was one with all things. And so it was really, it was a really remarkable experience. It was, have you ever seen that doll, Stretch Armstrong? Do you know this one, Stretch Armstrong?
Yes, of course.
Yes, it felt like that. It felt like this ability to just stretch, and it was very uh, like elastic or plastic almost in nature, where I could just really stretch galaxies and beyond and zoom into consciousness. And here's the thing that I think is one of the most important points, is that as I was doing that and being very curious and popping in and getting access to all that data, and it did feel, and I say data, it feels very impersonal, but it was very impersonal. It was wonderful, but it was also, it felt more like data. And so as I was getting access to all of that experience, I had the distinct feeling of wishing and like this desire that the things that I was experiencing also knew that they were of God or of divine energy. Like I had a distinct feeling that most of it didn't feel like it was actually connected to the divine, although it was connected to the divine, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes. Wow.
Yes.
So how long I know time is so different. So you're on the toilet and you have died,
Mhm.
all these other things are probably happening to your physical body, like they're
Yes.
coming to rescue you, right? And they're coming to take you to the hospital. And do you have any idea what the physical earth time was versus what it felt like to you that you were in that cosmic realm?
I don't, but I sense it was about like 10 minutes of death. And in the meantime, my husband has found me, is coming in, is trying to slap me, to get me to take a breath. And so he can call 911 and all that. But meanwhile, up there, to your point, what I saw up there is that time is not what we think it is, that time's happening all at once. So all of the lives, we think of it as a past life and a future life and a current life. It's what I call concurrent lives. They're all happening all at once, which is huge for people's healing, because if there's a version of you, and by the way, there's multiple versions of ourselves, if there's a version of you happening in a life that's unhealthy, and you're trying to be healthy in this life, but you've got all this healing that you're not dealing with in another version of you that's concurrent, it can actually bleed through to this life. It's something that your soul's working on a multidimensional level. And so, one of the things that I teach inside the Divine Light Energy Healers Academy is, when we're doing healing, to not only set the intention for healing this physical body right now, but sending out a ripple throughout all space and time for our generational healing as well as our multidimensional healing, right? So it's more of a multi-dimensional way of thinking about it. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces for me, that because on the other side I got a choice to come back, and we can talk about that, but let me just make this point, is that for me, one of the big reasons why I came back is so that I can share that we are so much more than what we've been taught and told in our history books, and we've literally been cut off from that. And my mom will actually tell you that I came into this world remembering a past life, and I would talk to her about that. And so, it's one of those things where now we're finally able to have the conversation, right? It's 2024. We're finally able to have the conversation about becoming citizens of the galaxy, becoming multidimensional aspects of ourself, and really embodying all that healing. But I really do think that one of the reasons why I chose to come back, at the time I didn't really know, but now I feel like that reason is so that I can share, gosh, we are multidimensional beings. We are huge cosmic forces, and really God in a body. And it's time we all wake up to that.
I love that. I love that so much because this channel is all about empowerment and for people to remember the power that they really and truly are. So I love that you said that. That's amazing. So let's go back to that place where you were experiencing all of those events that were happening as little bubble modules. You're only the second person I've ever heard explain that, but the person that I heard explain it and use the bubbles was having them as a life review and then also seeing them. Did you have a life review while you were on the other side?
I didn't. And I
Okay.
think that there's a reason for that.
Okay.
Kind of thinking about it after the fact. Um, I think due to the nature of how I died, I ended up getting taken out of that God consciousness realm. And at one point, I saw this really beautiful object that looked very much like Earth. And on the other side, by the way, as soon as you think of something or take your attention towards something, you go into that. And by the way, that's a huge piece of what humans are here to learn, that we are fast creators, and we're basically driving our Fords here in terms of creation. But on the other side, you get a rocket ship, if you will, right? That goes faster than the speed of light. So if we don't know down here how to manage ourselves and our thoughts and our feelings and our attention, then oh boy, on the other side, it's a real problem, and we are not allowed to move forward, right? So here, what happened to me was I saw this beautiful globe and I went down into it, and all of a sudden I was back in my Alyssa-ness. I was back as my Alyssa consciousness. And I looked down and I realized oh, while I didn't really have a body, I felt more physical, and everything around me was normal. It looked like the earth, except for one thing. Everything sort of had this olive drab, olive green cast to it. And I thought about my ex boyfriend, and instantly I popped right next to him, and he was by his condo. And I realized I couldn't talk to him or speak to him or interact with him, but it felt very comforting and it felt very healing. And as soon as I thought about somebody, I would instantly pop right next to them and be transported. And so it was a very instantaneous thing. And by the way, I didn't realize until years later where I was. And I was reading a book by Savannah Arienta, and she described to the T this reality that I was in, and she called it the astral realm. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's where I was, right? And it's a place where people go that die of real traumatic accidents, drug overdoses, suicides, that sort of thing. And it's a healing place because you're really not supposed to move on, but you're not ready to go back to earth yet. And so you need to heal yourself a bit before your soul's ready to come back around and get on the roller coaster ride again.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to ask you. There's so much to all of this. So you are not in your body, but you're in this astral realm. And from that perspective, did you see your body differently? Because I think it's amazing that you came back and you are in front of me today. You don't weigh 240 pounds. It sounds like from what we've discussed, you're not on those medications and that you're the embodiment of health. So when you were in that realm where you had your Alyssa-ness and you saw your body, did you have some kind of a recognition or attachment to that body and how the state that it was in versus how you are now?
Well, let me be clear. On the other side in the astral realm, I didn't really have a body then either. So it was more solidified than the other side, but it wasn't also my unhealthy body, right?
Oh,
It was more of
interesting.
a healthier version of me.
You're
But
the
it
version maybe that you are now.
And not now, but maybe like 10 years before my near death. But it wasn't even like, as I looked down, it wasn't even all that solid, but I felt very Alyssa like. And I knew that I was my Alyssa consciousness. And, by the way, I was going and hanging around people with addictions, and that felt healing. And I think that's a big key for people too, that if they are dealing with addictions, one of the big pieces is that folks who have passed on with addictions that are in the astral realm like to go and hang around folks here that have addictions. And so that tends to amplify the need for the drug or the medication because you have an energy that's sort of feeding off that addiction that you have to do a little more and dive a little deeper into, if that makes any sense.
So when you're in your process of overcoming that addiction, what do you do differently to maybe help mitigate the spirits or the entities that are around you? Is there a process that people can use to help them transcend that experience?
Yeah, well, the first piece is to do, as much of a cleanup as you can to not be in the drug use or the alcohol use, because that just opens up portals of energy where entities can come through and start to siphon off your energetics, right? And strengthen that addiction. And then also seeing a great energy healer who is willing to work in that realm and to close down those portals and seal up your energy. You can also do something as simple as doing some energy pulling practices and filling yourself up with divine light and love. Because I'll tell you something, those energies don't align with necessarily is a being with a lot of divine light and love. They just can't be around you. It's like, I live in Hawaii. I live near the ocean. And so I'm in the ocean every day. And there's manta rays where I live. And it's always wonderful when you're swimming with the manta rays because nothing against sharks, but you know that there won't be sharks around because the two are not a vibrational match for each other. And if a shark swims within a quarter mile of a manta ray, that manta ray knows right away and moves away. So there's never, it's always a there's always a quarter mile distance in between the two. And so it's a very similar thing when you are holding so much love and light and purified source energy within your field. Well, that's one of the ways that I healed my addictions. I mean, I was a complete and total addict in every sense of the word, a workaholic. I wasn't ever an alcoholic, but I sure did drink every day. But I loved the narcotics. Oh man, I loved them. I loved that painkiller stuff. And I was completely, totally, hopelessly addicted. And I never have been to an NA meeting or an AA meeting. And not to say that there's anything against that. I think that works for a lot of people. But for me, what helped me is filling up my cup to overflowing on that divine light energy, to where I would no sooner take a drink or put anything toxic in my body than I would cut off my own arm, because it's just so far away from the vibration that I am now. Does that make sense
It
about?
makes complete sense. And I want to add one more thing. I want to ask you one more question. So
Yeah.
I understand the practice of filling yourself with divine love, and that makes complete sense. And I think everybody, and we'll talk a little bit more about how the people that are watching can learn how to do that. But the other part of it is, I feel like we have free will, which is our universal gift from God that cannot be violated. And once people understand that, they can also say things like, I dispel anybody that is not from the highest and greatest good, who is not of the light. And you can make it so that those entities cannot violate, they're not allowed to violate our free will. That's my understanding. What is your understanding about that?
Absolutely. And that's what's really key. And I love that you brought that forward, because there's a practice. And is it okay if I share this practice here?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Yes.
So on the other side, what I learned is that we're a lot like a computer program. And whether you want to believe it or not, things operate a lot like a computer simulation here. Where while we are a human in a body, we're also God consciousness in a body. And so the driver of the body is technically the God consciousness, whether we are aware of that or not, and operating as such. So we have a lot that we can do in command. And if you have a Mac computer, there's a little command button right down here on your Mac computer, and it's command. And then you hit C for copy, or command V for paste. So you can command the energies to come forward. And I like to command a purity blast. So it sounds like this, and you guys can do this with us. I now command a blast wave of purified divine light source energy to come to me and through me and clear out my entire body, my mental body, my emotional body, my spiritual body, and my physical body, of any and all things that are not of the highest light. I command this purity blast now in this moment. And then imagine this beautiful, just brilliant light coming forward through you, not from a place of fear, but from a place of love, and commanding that love energy through into your body. And you will blast out anything and everything. And a great example of this, and I just love how art imitates reality. Have you ever seen the movie Harry Potter? Have you seen those Harry Potter movies
Yes.
where,
Yes.
yes, where he's learning to command the Dementors away from him? And he's never very effective until he invokes the love of his parents, and he infuses himself with that love, and then he commands that energy and blasts everything out. And that's really the secret key to life, is invoking those frequencies of love, because on the other side, oh man, talk about unconditional love is not a word that even comes close. Bliss is not a word that even comes close. It's beyond anything that we have descriptive language for, the feeling of being held and loved and one with all things. And so the more we can infuse ourselves with that energy here, that for me is really how I got my life to change. I had to infuse that into my daily life and bring that forward. And that's what changed me. I wasn't one of those miraculous ones that came back and was, totally different in a week. It took me about 5 years to integrate the learnings and the lessons and even to be able to talk about my experience because I thought, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy. I mean, I knew my ex-husband would think had lost my mind. And even I thought on the other side, because all of a sudden, all my skills got turned on. I could see frequency. I could smell and taste frequency. I was like, oh God, I think I might have, I jokingly call it the drain bramage, not brain damage. I call it the drain bramage, right? Because I was out for a while. I was lips blue, nails blue, face completely. And, you know, and so you never know what can happen. But it was over time that I realized, oh, with enough stuff that I was predictive on and very accurate with, even my ex-husband said, boy, I don't believe in the afterlife. I don't believe in any of the things you believe in, but boy, you sure have been accurate. Like I can't explain what it is, but I can see it's something.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right. Well, let's dive into this a little bit and you not only had all of these after effects, but I know that you also got very, very profound downloads.
Mhm.
So let's talk about some of the after effects first. So you're seeing frequencies.
Mhm.
What does that mean for the people that are watching, and what did that look like from your vantage point?
Well, first off, I thought my eyes had gone bad, right? So, how do I describe this? Imagine being able to look at a picture or somebody and see the exact drugs that they have in their system, or see the exact relationships that they're in, or see past things that have happened to them. And it all happens like little overlays on top of their image, and you kind of see it. So, when I talk about seeing frequency, everything has a frequency bandwidth, and so I see that, right? And for me, it shows up as color, sometimes
Hmm.
code, sometimes images. So I can look at somebody and I'll see actual images in their, I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. So it is a weird thing. And at the time, I really did think, I thought, oh boy, this is bad, But then I started to work with it. My sense of smell and taste started to really amplify. I call it a dog nose that I have. So I can smell disease on people, quite like a dog could. I can smell other things too. I can smell abundance. So there's smells to everything. And let's see what else.
Have you ever mapped these smells? Like mapped what they are? I suppose smells are hard because it's not like you can say this smells like an orange. It must have an other aroma, but you must have somehow mapped this to be able to understand what was what.
Well, that's a great question. So it took me a while to kind of pinpoint and understand what was going on. Because at first, I'd be around people and I'd smell them and I'd be like, oh, I know they've got kidney disease. Oh, and it would just be a knowing, and a smelled knowing. So when you say, can you map it? It really is mostly about like, what's the smell and the knowing that's coming at the same time,
Okay, that makes a
right?
lot of sense.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So what was the big, I guess maybe what was one of the first or the biggest, these inklings that you have, because you don't know this for a fact. These are just knowings that you have and the smells. What was the first one where you got a confirmation and you were like, oh my gosh, this is really real?
Yeah, it was. So still wasn't driving yet. I had lost the ability to drive. I had lost the ability to read. I mean, I couldn't even read at this point, or do a lot for myself after I was back. And my husband at the time was backing out of the driveway, and we lived in a country. We had a big country property with one of those big long country driveways, and a beautiful tree at the end of the driveway on the passenger side. And so I'm on the passenger side and he's backing out of the driveway and kind of going really fast. He's gunning it a little bit because we live on a country road and he's just going to swing out. And I said, be careful. There's a handicapped driver coming and they're not going to see you and you're going to hit them and they're going to hit you. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, no, I'm telling you, be careful. Because I saw it all happening. Right. And uh, he didn't really believe me at the time, except he's smart. He was a smart guy. So he slowed down. And just as he was slowing down and getting to the end of the driveway, mind you, I couldn't see anything on that side. Sure enough, here comes a car whizzing by. And he's like, "How did you see that car?" And then he looked and he's like, "They had a handicap plate." And I was like, "I know." And there had been enough stuff between us at that point. That's when he started to believe. And he's like, "How could you possibly know that?" And I said, "Exactly. How could I possibly know that? I couldn't see that. You can see I'm totally blocked from seeing anything on the road." And he's like, "How?" And I said, "Well, you have to start to understand, like, there's other information that you're not getting that I now have access to on a regular basis."
So is this information that is inherent to everybody, and it's something that can be taught?
Yes. I love that you asked this question.
Because
Yes.
I know that everybody watching is like, "How do I learn how to do this?"
Yes, you okay, because we all have the ability to do this, I believe. Now, again, to some degree, people have higher abilities than others, just like some people have better palates than others, but we can all taste food, right? And some people have better eyes than others, but most people can see, right? And yes, granted, there's a few on the ends of the spectrum, but we have these senses that we have been, in my belief, trained out of on purpose from using. And I say on purpose for a reason, because we're waking up to the fact, especially here in the Western world, right, that there's been a bit of an agenda, so to speak, about how we are as human beings. Not as much in Eastern wisdom traditions and civilizations. They're more tapped in, I think, than the Western world is. But in the Western world, it's mostly about the training is be a good consumer, right? Be successful, do whatever it takes to be successful at any cost, even if it's at the cost of your health or your soul or your family's well-being. Do whatever it takes to be successful so that you can be a good consumer, right? And that's just been the program that's been here on planet Earth, especially in the Western world. And so I think we're finally getting to the point where we're breaking out of that piece, especially with this eclipse cycle that we're about to head into. If I can just transgress for a second or digress, whichever, in 2017, we had a solar eclipse in August that sort of set us on a course to explore some of the lower expressions and do deeper shadow layers of healing. And so if you're listening to this right now, I want you to think back to 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. You've probably been through a whole bunch of stuff that you never thought you'd be going through and
Yep,
had to do deep levels of healing.
yep,
And so now what's really cool is we're coming into another eclipse cycle that if you've been doing the healing work and you've been digging deep and clearing out and doing the healing, odds are your psychic skills are being amplified. Odds are that you are going to be set on a course for a higher level of a higher trajectory into more of a positive next path for you, where the things that you've been wanting can really come through because you've done that healing work. Now, I will also say there's a whole set of folks that are about to enter a real deep dark night of the soul after this eclipse cycle happens. That's coming, I won't say it's coming on April 8th, but it's April 8th is initiating that cycle to where if the people haven't been doing the healing work, they will get initiated into a cycle where the kind of like me, I was living my life. I was working myself to death in a corporate job, and it took that big dark night of the soul, and for me a total reboot. I had to die to go through this process, which I don't recommend. You don't have to. You can stop it before you get to the rock bottom. Rock bottom is a choice. I had many chances to stop it before rock bottom. I just didn't. So, we all have that choice, but we're waking up to the fact that we have these psychic skills. And the truth be told, we need to train it into ourselves because we've been left brain educated. And we've not really, any of us, been right brain educated. And once you learn how to tap into your right brain with your left brain, the whole world opens to you and you can have vast access to information. And I kind of also think it's a good thing of how it's happening, because imagine a lot of the people that are on the planet right now with maybe not the best intentions knew how to manipulate and work with universal divine source energy that's here for them. Boy, you can really cause a lot of funkiness. So when you're tapped into those psychic senses, you also are able to work with and mingle your energies and mold those energies to create this different life for yourself. But I really do think that one of the things that's required, not to work with the energy, but to do it well and on the side of the light, is to have the heart activated,
Mm.
because many people who know how to work with energy don't have the heart activated. And that's part of the reason why we're in the pickle that we are in right now, if any of
So,
that makes sense.
what does it mean to have your heart activated? I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about the heart chakra, right?
Mhm.
And what can people do to, I think if your heart is activated or not. If your heart is activated, I think the answer is yes, you already know that it is. But if you're not sure, then maybe it's not. How would somebody go about in activating
I love that. If you're not sure, it's probably not.
it?
For sure.
Yeah.
So one of the way, and I think there's markers of heart activation that you can, for positive now. So listen for this. The first way is that you feel the pain and pleasure of everyone around you, right? If you are not feeling the pain and pleasure of everyone around you, and that includes people at the grocery store, then likely there's levels to activating the heart. Because when your heart is activated, you won't be able to take actions that are harmful. You cannot do it because you already can feel what will happen for the other person on the other end. So really it's just tuning into, can I feel both the pain and the pleasure of every person in my life at all times? And if I think a harmful thought about my boss or my neighbor, can I instantly feel the pain that they're feeling because I'm thinking that thought? And if you can't answer yes to that, then there's a level to which the heart needs to open even more. And we really want to activate that heart because, I used to work in the technology industry and cell phones, and we are, like it or not, like technology. We're like a cell phone cell tower, and we're broadcasting this frequency out and around us. Heart Math Institute, who's a research society, has mapped that we can, by equipment, measure that 8 feet around us is a radius of where our heart frequency is most times. Now, I believe that it goes much longer than that, much farther than that. We just don't have the current equipment to measure it, right? So where it's a fault of our current technology that we can't measure how far that heart frequency can travel. But our hearts are impacting us at all times and those around us. And you can literally change the vibe in the grocery store. You can literally walk in, and instead of being in a hurry or being in a rush, you can look at every person and just acknowledge that they too are a divine being of light, instead of running those old judgment programs. And I don't know about you, but, and I hope my mom wouldn't mind me saying this. I don't think she would, but our family, we were raised with a lot of judgment, and she would grab my hand in the grocery store and squeeze my hand to look at the big person or the deformed person or the person, whatever, that we're having judgment about that particular day. right? And so if you can stop some of those programs, and it's a very conscious thing that you have to do, especially if you've been like me, raised with a lot of judgments, and most people have, right? And then instead see everybody as a divine piece of God, because ultimately, and this is the thing that we've been trained out of and that we forget, is that every single thing here on the planet, and I say thing for a reason, because even the stuff that's not animate is of God. It's of the consciousness. And it's even the stuff that we perceive as evil or dark is still of consciousness, of God. And when we see it in separation, when we see it as evil or dark, and we're not recognizing that it too, even though it doesn't know it is, we know it is divine consciousness, it keeps it in darkness. And what we think of our mind with judgment and in darkness, we keep in judgment and in darkness. It doesn't allow it to transform. And we've all seen that movie about the kids who are just terrible, and the teacher knows they're terrible. And then one day there's a substitute teacher comes in, and that substitute teacher thinks they're geniuses. And sure enough, the whole class changes, right? And all of a sudden there's a classroom full of geniuses. And what we have forgotten or lost touch with or been trained out of is that our consciousness imprints itself on all that we are seeing. And when we imprint our consciousness on something, it allows it the ability to transform if it wants to, or it needs to, or is appropriate. And so, really, part of the big work that we have down here is not only turning on our psychic skills and turning on our heart, but understanding that we're projecting this reality, and we are having a lot to do with what we experience in the world. And if any point in time we don't like what we're experiencing, we can actually shift it. And it's actually okay to shift it. You get the chance to shift it. And I believe that's why we're here in this lifetime. It's our healing lifetime so that we can shift it. If you believe in alternate history of Atlantis and Lemuria, or some of the yogic cycles, my sense, and from what I saw on the other side, is that we're actually here right now to heal that and not allow or not let that catastrophe doomsday scenario run anymore. We can actually cancel and heal that program, just like you can cancel and heal the program of a parent maybe who had cancer, and you make the decision, I'm going to have a healthier body, I'm going to switch off that DNA, I'm going to do my life a lot differently, I'm going to heal the childhood wounding, and be a different parent, or whatever it is that you're healing. You can heal generationally. And I also think we're doing it on a global scale for what's happened in the past. That we, by the way, most people don't have access to that knowledge or wisdom. It's kind of finally coming through now, but most people don't know about Atlantis. Most people don't know about Lemuria. Most people don't know about the yogic cycles, right?
Right, for sure. All right, let's go back to the universal consciousness because when I introduced you, we talked about how you went from your NDE to understanding universal consciousness. So, just why don't you briefly explain what universal consciousness is and how every individual soul who thinks that they're insignificant in the 7 to 8 billion people on the planet actually can make a difference because of what you understand now about universal consciousness?
Well, universal consciousness is a big topic. I want to first say it's a big topic. How I see it is this: you are God in a body, and you feed back your consciousness into universal consciousness. So, what you're doing impacts the whole. You are growing consciousness at your level that you are experiencing life, and you're feeding that back up into universal consciousness. And so, therefore, when you make a healing shift in yourself, you ripple that out into the whole entire universe. I'm going to give a really good example here that I think everyone can get. Okay. And it's a really personal example. So, one of the weird programs I got as a kiddo was that it's dangerous. Life's dangerous, and especially it's dangerous around men. And I was actually kidnapped by a man coworker, and my life was threatened. And I had always, leading up to that in my childhood, I mean, boys would always pick on me. I had a boy break my leg when I was a kid. I had a boy break my arm when I was 5. All of these things was this program that I was running of it's dangerous to be a woman around a man. And so therefore, after my near death experience, I realized I have to heal this. I have to heal this. And so now I have this massive safety bubble that I was able to go back and heal all of that. And now when people come into my presence, especially women with maybe trauma in their history, they always tell me, "Oh my gosh, I feel so safe. I feel this huge safety energy just coming and washing over me." And so it ripples out to them. So, in other words, when you choose to do the healing work for you, you can ripple that out so that other people don't necessarily have to go through some of the unfortunate or really traumatic things that you did. And just by you changing yourself, due to the nature of how our universe works, you're actually changing the universe. And how I actually also see this is that we live, if you can imagine, there's 8 billion of us here. We actually are having 8 billion different worlds that sort of collide together. And if you can imagine, let's say you have a parent who's sick and you feel really healthy, and you go and you hang around that parent, odds are they're going to tell you, "I feel so much better when you're here. I feel good." And odds are for you, your health's probably going to dip a little bit. You're probably going to feel a little more tired or depleted, right? Because your energies are mingling and the energy has to go down to match. And so you're both trying to calibrate. So from this universal perspective and universal consciousness, we're all feeding it back into the one in order to expand that consciousness, but we're also all balancing each other out in the ways that we are. So the more healing and growth and evolution you do, the more you act like that cell tower and you're radiating out this frequency that other people are going to have to come up and match. Now, you might come down a little bit, and that's up to you to notice. Oh, okay, I've come down a little bit. How can I boost my frequency and stay up here and help these people, come up, and me come down a little less and have more healthy equilibrium. And I will also say right now, there's a huge disparity in a lot of cases where you might be flying really high up here, and there's a lot of people really gutting it out in really nasty, gnarly scenarios. So the more people we have that are heart activated, the more people that we have that are in touch with their ability to be divine creators, it just is something that is so helpful and so important and is critical right now.
Can you give us a couple of tips about what people can do when they are starting to feel like that frequency and the vibration is lowering that they can do to help raise it up again? Just some simple things.
Yes, and by the way, these are gonna sound so simple that you're like, "No, that can't work." I just can't see that working, but I swear to you, if you do this, it works. You just have to work it. I see testimonials from clients and students all the time where their whole entire lives have changed. They bought their dream home, they have their dream relationship, their bank accounts are overflowing. And that's just the fun stuff, right? But their daily experience in life is very magical. So if you are feeling already that you're tired, your energy's dipping, that lets you know one thing is that you are accidentally processing energy for people. So I want you to think of an apple core. You know how it's got a little, funnel up top and it kind of comes down to the bottom. What most empaths and people on the planet do is they cycle other people's energy through the top of their apple core and down through their body. And then they kind of clean it up for them unconsciously and then kick out that energy back to the person. Because we're all little bubbles, right? If you can imagine, this is a torus field, that apple core shape around the body. Your torus fields are intermingling. And so most people that are on the consciousness path, and by the way, listening to this interview right now. That's you.
Right.
Yes,
If
yes, we
you
are
got
talking to
this
you.
far, if you got this far, you're on the path.
Yes, we are talking to you, my friend. So odds are you're cycling energy down and through your body unconsciously. So the first thing you want to do is set your intention to stop doing that. Okay. And how we do that is instead we practice a bubble of light coming from our heart center that acts like a central sunshine. So think about how the sunshine does it. The sun never says to itself, oh my gosh, I hope that Mars doesn't get too close. It's going to suck out my energy today. The sunshine never says that. The sunshine just radiates its light. So if you can imagine yourself as a central sunshine, just radiating light out of you in a huge bubble, you will feel really recharged. You will feel completely protected and connected, especially if you imagine central sunshine from your heart getting connected down into the earth and up into divine light energy. You'll feel so charged all day long. You'll walk into that grocery store or that mall, you will not feel depleted. You will be witnessing everybody. They'll all be geniuses. You'll look at them all and be like, oh, look at that one. Oh, God, that one's so gorgeous. Oh, look at that one's. Oh, my gosh. And you'll just be seeing all people through that lens of divine light and physical form. And when you do that, when you peel off the layers of judgment and you stop in taking everybody's energy into your energy field unconsciously, right? Because we're not taught that we accidentally do that, and you instead reverse the polarity, reverse the energy field, you will feel amazing. And if you ever do feel your energy dip, then you have to go back to, ooh, I went a little unconscious there. I stopped my radiance. I stopped the flow of energy from my heart. And I can see that I was accidentally in taking too much of that person's energy. So at any time, you can just invoke that purity blast. You can invoke that divine light as in through your heart. And I do a little invocation every day. Can I share it?
Please do. Yes. I'd love to hear what this is.
Okay, so this is so simple, and you can just do this in the morning. I say, I now command that divine light energy flow to me and through me at all times throughout this day. I now command that my energy field is filled with joy, love, peace, ease, instantaneous healing. And so that energy then fills up my bubble, and I imagine it coming through my heart. And when people get around me, they're like, oh, I feel better. Oh, I'm more abundant. There's a saying in some of my programs that everything Alyssa touches turns to gold. It's really not that, okay? It's really that people are encountering an energy field that they can tap into that tunes them like a tuning fork and activates their own abundance, activates their own ease, activates their own joy. And you too can do it. I mean, it's no secret. You just activate those energies as and through you every single day. And you can just ask them to go out before you and pave the way for your day with magic and miracles. And you'll just watch your whole life change. It's just like this, if you want white teeth, you brush your teeth every day, whether you need to or not. But what we haven't been taught is energy hygiene. We haven't been taught how to take care of our energy, how to activate energies in our field. But once you do it and you do it consistently, you do it every day, it's just like working out. If you're working out every day, you're going to notice a difference in your body in a month and especially in 3 months. And so these practices aren't just one and done practices, they're practices to be done every single day. And it's just like brushing your teeth.
Wow. I love that you just said you pave your day with magic and miracles every day.
Yes.
Wow. I think that's so powerful. I'm going to ask you one last question before we share with everybody how they can connect and find you. You mentioned that we need to do certain things before we leave this earthly incarnation because it affects what happens to us on the other side. So, will you share what you learned from your near death experience about the importance of people making these changes before they leave this incarnation?
Yeah. So there's three things that I saw that our like a mastery that we need to have before we leave this incarnation. And then we could talk forever about the things that we need to do in order to do that. One of them, just in general, is taking responsibility for your life. You can't heal anything if you're pointing the finger. They did that to me, this one did that to me, it's their fault. You'll never heal anything if you're pointing the finger. You've got to take responsibility. And look, I'm a kidnapping survivor. My doctor overdosed me on drugs, but if I don't say I have to take responsibility for that at some point, and I'm not victim blaming, I'm saying you've got to take responsibility for where you're at and for healing it, right? Not for it happening, but for where you're at and for healing it and stopping the process of being in victim mentality. And that's unfortunately where we've got. So, how do you get out of victim mentality? How do you master these three levels? Well, the first level is the physical body. You have to master the physical body. If you can't master the physical body down here, guess what? You're not going to do well in a light body. It's a lot faster. Like if you can't drive your Ford, then no way are you getting access to the jet fighter, right? You
Right.
have to be able to master the physical body. And that means being able to tame addictions, being able to master your food pieces, being able to master things like hunger and thirst and breathing. You have to master your mental body. Do you let your mind run away with you? Do you imagine the worst case scenarios? How are you with your mind, and then how are you with your emotions? Can you master your emotional body, which is your heart center? Are you able to tune in to your fellow human beings and understand that we're so connected that your emotions impact them on such a vast level? And it's not to say not to feel your emotions, because I don't want to insinuate that, but it's a process of being able to feel your emotions and also gain mastery over them so that they are not overtaking you, or that you're not operating just from emotion, you're operating through all the bodies. And so gaining mastery over those three things is key, and something that I sense a lot of your audience is working through at least a few pieces of right now.
Well, Alyssa, you are a wealth of information. I can feel that you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. I just know that from you. So, if people want to connect with you and they want to work with you, how can they find you? How can they do that?
Yeah, well, there's a toolkit that I have that is amazing. It talks about a lot of the things and processes that we did today, only a little bit more in depth. So you can go to raiseyourvibrationtoolkit.com and just get the downloads and get some of the command statements and the purity blasts and all that good stuff so that you can just start to install some of the stuff from the other side into your everyday practice. And that's really the best way. And it also helps you upgrade your energy and raise your vibration too.
And I love that you're sharing that for free with the world. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, this has been so much fun. This time went so fast. I could
It
talk
did.
to you for a really long time. I mean, there's so many more questions we could ask. Probably have to do this again. But thank you so much. I am so glad that we got to connect today. You are just a beautiful light inside and out.
Oh, thank you so much. Likewise. Thanks for being here with me. It's such a blessing.
Yes. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching.
Love you guys. Love you.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.